welcome back to another Script Concierge session. Today, the wonderful Kafi, Kareem, and I will be talking about why writers fare well when they write from their own experience. But we're attacking it in a different way. We're not necessarily teaching like we usually do, but we're teaching. So, Kafi, tell us what inspired this convo.
Yeah, so I'm a big music lover. I listen to a lot of music. And so one of my favorite songs right now is Drake's Controller. And so I'm vibes into the song. And then I hear this dude say, "You can't listen to me talk and go tell my story." And like, I just heard this in my head, like, hold the track. I was like, wait, who's going to tell this boy that is exactly what happens when you're a writer? All of your friends, all of your loved ones end up all in your stories. You listen to them talk, you watch how they speak, you watch how they walk, you watch how they go about life, you analyze their work, their relationships, how they eat. And you never know what about the people in your lives, complete strangers even, is going to end up in your writing, because that's just the nature of being a writer. You observe the world around you, including all of the people around you, and different parts of what you observe and what you get inspired by work their ways into your stories. So sorry, Drake, but that is exactly how it works. And whoever she is can listen to you talk and go tell your story, because she's probably a writer.
All right, let's, just so that everyone knows we're not lying, let's right? Let me pull it up here. But you can't just listen, come tell my story. You can't listen to me talk and go tell my story.
That part there. So just in case you don't trust me and my expertise, one of the most inspiring writers I think in the game right now is Issa Rae. Everybody saw her come up from Awkward Black Girl, which was a web series, and then she landed a show on HBO. And she confirms in all of her interviews that all of her friends make their way into her stuff. And it's just how it goes, It's like, sorry, not sorry, but I'm a writer,
So let's see what Issa actually says.
Okay.
Let me see if I can pull it up here in this Chrome tab. So first, I think the Ellen one, that one was funny when she was on Ellen. So let me see if I can just pull that one up. Make it big here.
Issa!
Okay, one girl from a web series that I did a while ago called Awkward Black Girl, I had this character called Baby Voice, because those people that talk are like, it's like, speak up. And I made the character a guy, because I was like, oh, she'll never know anyway. And she called me, she was like, is this about me? And I was like, no, girl, chill. Like, everything's not about you. But I was like,
have you ever gotten caught in your writing, like with somebody recognizing themselves in your work?
Not yet. I actually, though, wrote like a script that probably won't see the light of day. That is like very, very personal. The person would definitely know.
Recognize themselves.
The whole thing. I didn't even try to change that much. I was like, this is our actual story.
Yeah.
I'm telling the world. But that's one of the ones that it will probably, either I'm going to sell it, so it's not produced by me, or it's probably just going to be like shelved.
I hear you. Well, I mean, I could definitely relate, because everything that I've written so far has pieces of people I know in it. You know what I mean? Either like inspirations from direct stories they told me, or from aspects of their personalities, or how they made me feel, or how I see them moving through life. Anybody from, like I said, people that you meet on the Maxi stand who you may not even know, to exes. Sorry to say, but it's true. They end up in there. Friends, my parents. So I can definitely relate to that. And I didn't shelve any of the stuff. It's all out there. So if anybody recognizes themselves in anything, it may or may not be a coincidence. I usually try to mix it up though. It's never just like, taking one person and then just doing a biographical spin on them. It's usually like a little piece of this and a little piece of that, and one aspect of a person might make their way into a character or a story, but it's never like, a biographical report.
The full story on this specific
No, exactly. Because then I would have to like pay them and buy the rights to their story. And I ain't got that kind of money. So, you know what I mean? But mix it up.
All right. Do we want to look at another clip?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay. I like this one because she talks about like making things relatable. That's what I like the most about this one. So let me see if I can, again, pull that one up. Chrome tab. How does it look over here? Okay, I just need to make it big. And then this is when she was on Stephen Colbert. Two of them are on Colbert, so let's see what she says here.
Now, this is based on your own life, this series, right?
It's partially based off of experiences, a lot of my friends, and I honestly just, wanted to create something that I felt like was that showed Black people as relatable, and that was something kind of for us and by us.
Well, we got a clip here. Can you tell me what's happening?
Okay, so the for us by us thing, I think we can relate to that.
Absolutely. For Caribbean people, by Caribbean people, right? It's a masterclass. Yeah, we can definitely relate to that. I think everybody that I see working in the Caribbean space right now as writers is really looking to see how we can define the Caribbean aesthetic in terms of visuals in our cinema, but also the Caribbean essence, like how we can capture it through dialogue, through stories, through, I was talking to somebody the other day who was a filmmaker who was asking questions like, if you use Blake Snyder's Beat Sheet, does that mean that you're actually like, maybe using a format that isn't authentic to us? And should we have our own formats and that kind of stuff? And I think those kind of questions are important. And I think that we're at a point where we are testing the waters to see how much of these storytelling rules and conventions are actually universal and how much of them are like native to certain cultures. And my theory is that before I go into that, there's this theorist that I love. His name is Joseph Campbell. And he looks at storytelling throughout human history. And what he found is that there's a common pattern, no matter if it's native storytelling, Native American storytelling, European storytelling, African storytelling, Asian storytelling, and this is throughout history. There's a common pattern in terms of what we are trying to communicate as human beings about our experience in the world. And I'm kind of, based on that research, I found that to be true in terms of how I look at stories as well. And I think that they're universal elements that we all, use and that we all relate to. But our job as Caribbean creators is to make sure that we get our truth into that universal format, our perspective into that universal format, because we're still human, right? And we still, speak the same, we still use the same tools to communicate. It's like we're all in the Caribbean. We might have African descent, we might have Indian descent, we might be of Chinese descent, whatever we are, but we speak in English, right? And nobody's telling us that we're less Caribbean or less African because we speak English, because that's just the tool that we have. And cinema is the same way. There are certain tools and certain structures that we just have to use to communicate. That doesn't mean that we can't speak our Caribbean truth with those tools, just because they're not maybe native to us or created by us. But we can create things by us with those structures. And I know that's a bit of a segue, but I love the theory stuff. So that for us, by us thing is a really important question. And I think we're at an exciting time right now in terms of Caribbean storytelling, where we really have, we continue to, experiment with ways to get our stories out there in the most authentic way possible. And so that when audiences see this stuff, they can be like, yeah, that's me. Because that's the goal, right? To really make audiences feel like, yeah, they see themselves.
Yeah, because for us, by us too, when we're talking about like technical things, a lot of times it's just like, if we're going to create our own, we'll need everybody to kind of like buy into it for it to be even universal within our community. Because if it's just you doing it, that's cool, that's your style, but it's not something that's intrinsically ours if only one person is doing it.
Oh,
right?
absolutely.
So where systems come into play.
Yeah, exactly. It becomes ours when the culture embraces it, right? And so, like you said, it's about getting the us to really engage with it, and for it to organically become a part of somebody's heart space, and our culture's heart space,
And then when we're talking about like writing based on your experience, it's like you have to have experience to be able to do that, right? So it's just like, that's where kind of like diversity comes into play too, because experiences also bring bias into the picture when you're writing. Because I'm going to write, if I was writing about a specific topic that I had a specific experience with, I'm going to definitely be biased on how I see that. And it gets kind of like problematic when you have the same people writing the same things, like they're getting the opportunities to write everyone's story essentially. So,
yeah, perspective is important, right? Perspective is part of being seen. Like I think like when I think about Big Man Dan, which is a short that I wrote, I was really proud that our team got a female perspective out there on a dynamic that often isn't spoken about, right? From a woman's perspective, about the dynamic of, needing a savior, and then realizing that maybe you can do this on your own, but then having the male-female situation where, to protect the male ego, you still have to pretend maybe that you did need a savior, or that you do need a savior, and maybe give away credit for your work and all that all that is stuff that a lot of women that I've spoken to can relate to in different situations, and have had to kind of like figure out how they are going to overcome it in their own journey. And so I was really proud that we could get that perspective out there from a Caribbean woman's perspective, right? So just as you're talking about, like, everybody's perspective is biased, and we can't just have one perspective all the time. Like when you think about dancehall music and dancehall stories, most of the time we just get in this male perspective of the world, right? And then as women, we're supposed to absorb this perspective that's not necessarily ours. And I think it's important for, different genders, different religions, different ethnicities, different cultures, to get their stories out there, and to also get the diversity within the cultures, because that's what it's about, right? The Caribbean is not homogenous. Everybody in the Caribbean is not going to have the same perspective. We're not going to all see the world in the same way. And so, being able to tell different versions of our stories and to get our different perspectives out there is important too. Because there's always going to be people who are like, yeah, I see the world that way too. And I think to bring it back to Issa, our masterclass in Issa, right? Awkward Black Girl was one of those validating moments in screen fiction history for Black women around the globe who did not fit into the usual characterization that is seen in mainstream media. You had this intelligent, shy, awkward, quirky, romantic, complex, rapping, struggling character who was like going through dating woes, work woes. She was complicated. She was smart. She didn't have it all put together. She was confident enough to like do her thing, even though she didn't have the biggest booty in the world. You know what I mean? And she didn't necessarily like, have like a lace front on all the time. Not that anything's wrong with lace fronts. Lace fronts are awesome. Let me be very clear. If you're wearing a lace front right now, don't feel like I'm attacking you, because I think, it's cute. But I'm just saying that you don't often see different ways of presenting Black beauty, Black womanhood. And Awkward Black Girl was one of those moments where a lot of people, I know I was like, oh, look me. Right?
Yeah, it's refreshing.
Look me, like, or parts of me at least.
Yeah,
right?
we always feel like we have to present as like Euro visual in terms of features and how we wear our hair and all of that. Like I had that straight hair for a very long time until I was just like, this is not good for my health. So my choice is to not, right?
Yeah, and I mean, my thing is, even like how we present characters in films and in real life, or like, in this type of stuff that we're doing right now, like it can get so political and can get so like heavy in terms of the importance of how you present, Black characters, Caribbean characters. And there's so many, I think it's important to show that there's so many ways to present yourself. And that, I like to switch it up. I like to straighten sometimes. I like to keep it curly. And I would love to present characters who show that range as well. But there is a problem when you feel like you only have to restrain yourself to one version of beauty or one version of presentation that is European. You know what I mean? There's nothing wrong with exploring the diversity and the flexibility of our beauty. But when you feel like the only way that it's acceptable is if it fits one standard that happens to be European, that's problematic. And Awkward Black Girl is one of those shows that broke that mold. And that was like, here I am in all my gorgeous cheekbones and amazing eyes, dark skin beauty, and I am the lead of the show, and you better be comfortable with it, right? It was great. Great.
Yeah, because even in Insecure, the girls are different. The people we see in Insecure are like vastly different in terms of how they present their personalities. We're not seeing like this one cookie cutter, like all the friends are the same and they're only friends because they are the same. And it's like, where's the conflict in that?
Yes. You have all types in the outward and the inward. You know what I mean? Like in terms of personalities and in terms of the outward presentations. And I really appreciate that about Insecure as well. You get to see a lot of different types of Black women getting along, which is great too, because sometimes we can feel like there needs to be a division. If you are, you choose like, you remember that Spike Lee joint, is it School Days, where it was like team good hair, team bad hair?
Oh yeah, I've had controversy around that one.
Right. So it's like sometimes, it can feel like, oh, you have to choose a side, right? And it's either your team Afro or team lace front, and the two can't come between, and that's just not real. Like, unity is always the most important thing. And I think Insecure shows Black women coming together with a bond of friendship that endures through a lot of challenges, and they, the outward choices that they might make in terms of style is a visual representation in terms of the writing and the film choices, a visual representation of the diversity that they may have in terms of their life approaches, and it doesn't stop them from being a unit and from being, collaborative and friendly and all that stuff. So I think it's dope.
Yeah, because even when you were talking about For Us By Us earlier, I was thinking also about lighting. I don't know why I think of Issa or like Insecure, and more recently like I May Destroy You. People always talk about like, this is how you like Black people, and I think when it comes to like Caribbean made film, I think you can sort of see some like visual cues of like, this is how the cinematographer.
Oh, absolutely.
But it's like, it's a good conversation to have because it's a lot of technical things too, right? Like I never really, when I went to school for journalism. So when we were talking lighting, we weren't talking about like having those tones and all of those things. It was just like, this is 3-point lighting. This is how you do it. Make sure you do it right before you go on camera, and that's it, right?
Yeah.
I didn't go to film school, so I didn't really get a chance to see like how color plays into like emotion and culture and all of those things. And I think Insecure and I May Destroy You they're also like case studies in we know how to light us.
Yeah.
So how to light us. Hollywood took note. This is how you light a Black person to highlight that true beauty that we have, right? So
melanin poppin', melanin poppin'.
And it's hard to have these
melanin
conversations, like you were saying, without being like political. And I think, especially from an American's perspective, like just following a lot of like American people in the industry on Twitter, or just in general on Twitter, it's just like everything is political, and it's kind of hard to kind of say, okay, but I want to just focus on the creative side of things, but you can't, because like when you're telling stories, politics is going to kind of like insert itself into the things that you do, right?
Yeah, I think it does. And you can still choose not to let that affect what you have to say, but you just have to understand that the art is going to land where it lands, and you could have whatever intentions going in, but once it goes out there, it's no longer yours, and it's going to be politicized, even if you aren't political. So you just have to kind of accept it. And it doesn't mean that you have to embrace that and say that you also want to be political, because if you don't want to, you don't have to. But there are people who are going to politicize your art, and it's just what is going to happen. And I'm so happy you brought up the cinematography, because I think the perspectives that can inform the cinematographer's choices make their way into the script. From the script, from the pen, you can start to paint portraits of people in a certain light, and you can tell how a writer holds a character, like in what esteem a writer holds a character and how they view them, and that the script is the blueprint for every other creative decision in a production. So how a writer paints a character is going to inform the costume designer's choices, the wardrobe and costume designer, same department, but then cinematography as well. Even set design, like if that character has a home, you know what I mean, a space that's theirs, how that writer paints that character is going to inform every other creative on the production's decision about how that character is presented. It's really important to have diverse perspectives from the writing, jump off.
And I think because you said set design as well, it reminded me of something where I don't remember what it was that I was either reading or watching, where it's just like also something set in a Haitian household or some kind of Caribbean household, where the set designer made some choices that we were just like, or people were just like, no, that's not. I think it was like a pineapple or something. Like I'll look it up and see if I can put it in the description, but it was just like the typical things that you would remember, like something that you would see and you'd be like, okay, every Caribbean grandmother has X on her walnut or whatever, or every household has a like dangling thingy that when you walk, right? Like all of that, like experience. Like if you don't have experience, you probably won't know. Like if the writer doesn't have the experience or the set designer doesn't have the experience, they probably won't know that like this is what that should look like. Like somebody has to kind of like take care to make sure that like this is authentic. And I think it's the same thing that we have this running conversation about language. It's the same thing where it's like someone has to take care to make sure that that is also shown in a great light,
Yeah, like I'm so glad you pointed that out, because it's crazy how you could tell, like as you were telling this story, I was like, I could imagine somebody watching it and just being like, that set designer was not Haitian. Because they just making choices that they think are Caribbean, you know what I mean? And then Caribbean people are in the audience like, no. And it shows that perspective is important in every capacity, you know what I mean? You could it bleeds into the work in a way that affects its authenticity. So sometimes the goal is not to be authentic, and it's to present a characterization, because fiction and fiction pieces, art has all sorts of purposes, and the aim is not always to be authentic. But if you are attempting to create something that resonates with audiences as authentic, it's really important to have the people from the culture on that production.
That's why I'm glad that our recent client, she took the time to reach out to us, even just to ask if we could help with looking at the cultural things in her script, because she's not native, and also that she's planning on, in her production, hiring people from the culture to make sure that that authenticity is there, because the story that she's telling, it does matter. The authenticity does matter. So I'm really happy that she had the kind of foresight to be you know what, let me make sure that at every step of the way, even from the beginning, that I have just an eye, even if it's not that you're hiring the exact person, you have someone there to consult and to really fact check and culture check, if you want to call it that. To make sure that things are good.
Absolutely. It was such a joy being able to analyze her script, because you could see the effort that she put into it in terms of the research to paint authentic Trinidadian characters. Her story was set in Trinidad. But even then, she's Canada-based, and there were a couple slips in her dialogue where she had phrases that were more suitable for Jamaican dialect. Just a couple moments. And being from native to the culture, and also being somebody who has been around a lot of West Indian people and was schooled in an environment where a lot of West Indian people came together, I was able to be exposed to the range of dialectical idiosyncrasies across our region. And so I think that's one of the strengths of our service, right? That we have, Jamaican backgrounds, Trinidadian backgrounds, we have exposure to Bajan accents, to Patois, to French Patois. We have exposure, a wide range of exposure that helps us see cultures, the way they speak, the way they eat, the way they move through life, and pinpoint, what are the elements of that culture, and how do we capture them in a screenplay format so that the final film has a blueprint that is authentically Caribbean.
Yes, I love it. So we're done talking about Drake.
we done with that. We over him now. So what else is there to get down on him about? I
don't know, but that's one thing that I noticed. Because this week, I think people say that he's a culture vulture or whatever, just because that he's done with PopCon and whoever else, whichever culture, and now he has done some Arabic thing. And I also heard criticism this week, because that new song dropped. I cannot remember the name. I haven't listened to it. That he hasn't matured. But this thinking about stuff like that makes me go back to when you were talking about artistic expression, right? Because it's the artist chooses what they want out of the situation, out of the piece of work that they're creating. They choose what they want, and like you said, we politicize it or critique it or rip it apart.
Yeah.
But then the thing is it also gets very personal. I think especially in this social media time where it's just everyone can say anything directly at you. It can get super personal. And I think Issa said that in, I don't know if it was this clip, because we have one more clip from her. No, I think it was the last one that we played, where it's because she named the character after herself. Having a namesake is a tough choice, but she made it. And people attack her, her fans. People who love her work attack her because of choices that the characters
made. Yep.
Yeah. And she has said that. So it's being an artist, I mean, it's rough.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. I don't know what else to say. Just yes. it's rough. It's rough because you are, the nature of being an artist is you're putting yourself and your work out there, even if you keep your personal life to yourself, through your work and your public presence. You're putting yourself out there, and one of the side effects of that is that you become fodder for all of the things that people like doing, which include, ripping people apart, and but it's also like positive things. It's also like, being entertained and getting inspiration from artists, and like feeling their vibe, and like getting guidance for how you are working through your life and how you are living, and how their stories resonate with your own. So there's that side of it, but then there's also the side of, sometimes, you just need something to do, and the easiest thing to do is to criticize, right? I don't know. And so you criticize and you pick people apart, and it's just part and parcel of the career choice, or the vocation, if you want to put it that way, because sometimes for a lot of people it's more than a career, it's like a calling, and it's just what it is. And I think when we first started talking about the Drake song, you pointed out that he's also a writer, or he has writers for him, and a lot of his songs are listening to people and then go telling their stories, right? About either how they affected him or what they did to him. So here he is, like, I know this whole line just sparked an entire episode, right? But it's like, here he is trying to tell people what they can do with their life. Trying to tell people how to live their life, right? And what stories they can tell. But he himself is doing the same thing, just listening to people and then go telling their stories. And that's what it is. It's telling your own story, other people's stories, and just trying to communicate something about how you are experiencing life, what you feel, and if people rip it apart, that's fine. But amidst the people that are ripping it apart, sometimes you make connections with people who really like identify with their work, and that's what it's about. It's not really for the people who are just like trying to rip you to shreds. Or maybe it is for them too, because at least you're giving them something to do, because clearly they have nothing to do. Right? So you're giving them something to do. You're giving them something to look at, something to criticize, something to, because even critique is a way of figuring out life, right? So you're giving them somebody and something to criticize, and so that they can figure out their own lives, and that's part of your job too, I guess.
Yeah, because I'm now thinking, like, is art even made for critique? Like, or a better way to ask it, art is made for critique, right? It's made for us because it's reflective of our culture and of a time. Like, aren't we supposed to critique it? I don't know.
Yeah, we can do whatever we want with it. That's the truth. We can do whatever we want with it. We can vibe to it. We can critique it. We can, you know what I mean? We can do whatever we want with it because it's out there. And that's just what it is. Once it's out there, there are no rules. It's not like you can't critique it. You can't, no, you can't tell people what to like. Can't tell people what not to like. You can't tell people, who to like and who not to like. You just can't control people. It's out there, and we can do whatever we want with it. And, and even the artist's purpose, they can't control that either. You make art as an artist from your perspective and what you want to communicate about your experience and what you want to help people, or maybe not help people, see about the world, or, whatever your goals are. You can't control that either. So it is just about, creation. I think, in my perspective, it's just about repeating the kind of cycle of bringing things from the invisible to the material, because everything in the world starts in an invisible plane, right? And then it becomes material. And creation is just about repeating that cycle and taking something that's invisible and putting it out in a way that's tangible where people can receive it, feel it. And then after that, after you put it out, there are no rules. Absolutely none. You cannot tell people what to do and how to live their life and how to consume art and whether they can critique it or whether or not they can critique it. I personally choose as an artist to try to not critique too much because I know how hard it is. I know how hard it is. And even something that I might think is crappy, I know how much effort probably went into making that crappy thing. And I know that it's also a process of like, you know, figuring it out and finding your voice and, you know, so I try not to be too harsh in my critiques when and if I do critique, but that's my personal choice. Nobody else has to make that choice, you know?
It's mine too, because I feel like I'm becoming, or I have become more empathetic when it comes to critiquing someone's work. I think I'm more harsh when it's just like, this person got paid $1 million to do this, right? But if it's a small person coming up, I'm like, okay, they're trying, they're new to whatever they're doing, you know, like they'll get better. Like I give them the benefit of the doubt that they'll get better. But like, it's like when it comes to like maybe the bigger kind of creators who Hollywood chooses over and over and over.
Yeah.
Nah, man, you have to come back to that car.
Even them, Gil, even them, it's like, make your money, how that's affecting me. Everybody could get some. I have my pie to eat. You eat your pie. Enough respect. You know what I mean? Like, make your money. I remember when I was in film school, like, I'm a James Cameron fan. I loved Titanic. I probably saw it like 6 or 7 times when I was in high school. Avatar, I was a big fan of too. I love the way he brings together technology and like ethical tropes, like archetypes, you know, like. Okay. But I like him. I remember when I was in film school in my master's program, people were tearing him apart. Like, he's not an auteur, he doesn't really know about cinema. You know, it's so you know, you know, his stories are just rip-offs of like, you know, existing tropes and blah 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 blah. He's terrible. Like, this man is making millions and millions of dollars. And yeah, his stuff is super commercial, but I like it. Like, everything is not for everybody. And so whoever making that $1 million and getting that check, even if I'm like, whoa, you made $1 million and that is so much crap, it's not my business how much money they're making, because there's somebody or many people clearly out there who are making that $1 million investment worth it. Because they wouldn't keep investing $1 million in this person if he wasn't making that, or she wasn't making that $1 million, then some back. So let them people enjoy the crap. If I think it's crap, right? From my perspective, eat your crap, enjoy it.
To clarify, for me, it's just like I want to enjoy what I'm watching, right? I wouldn't be the kind of, like, I have a very weird thing with critique too, because I wouldn't be the kind to be like, no one should watch this, it's garbage, why are you guys watching this, why are you celebrating it? If you celebrate it, that's fine, but I know that at home, behind closed doors, I'm gonna be like,
not for me.
Why
would I put myself through that? If I don't like it, why would I put myself through that? If I don't really connect with it, why would I put myself through it just to follow the bandwagon? No, I have to really, really like it. And that doesn't mean I can't support, but I don't need to you know, like surround myself by something that I don't really connect with, I don't think, when it comes to art.
And that's the part that I don't get to when it comes to critique. Like, I know we're going way deep into critique now, but like, if you don't like something, why do you spend so much time talking about it? Like, I don't understand. Because
you love it. No, you love it. You love it. Like, if it, like, you know what they say? They say that hate is still a form of attention, right? And so it's still a form of love, right? So if you, it's because it's attention. You're giving your energy and attention to something because you are intrigued by it. It keeps pulling your attention because there's something that keeps just drawing you to it, right? And if something keeps drawing you to it, that is love. But for whatever reason, the way this love presents itself might trigger things within you that you are not ready to accept. And so it becomes a kind of, you know, hate I guess. I don't know. This is just me theorizing. Who knows?
I agree
But-
with you. I've heard that too, like where it's like hate and love are just two different sides of the same coin. The real opposite of love is indifference, not necessarily hate.
Right. Exactly. And you know how they say no press is bad press? Because once people are talking about you, that means that you have a buzz. So once there's some kind of like buzz about you, that means that there's interest in you. And not all interest is going to be painted in rainbows and flowers. Sometimes it looks like, you know, people hurling vegetables at the what they call it, what do they call it? Is that gala, like where they used to hang people, or like
Oh yes, I think
yeah, whatever it's called. I forget what it's called. Yeah, but you know how like there were entire like these social conventions, like hangings and you know, taking people to the guillotine to chop their heads off, where villagers just enjoyed gathering around to throw stuff at this person. It didn't matter if they were guilty or not. It was just the pleasure of, you are terrible, so that we can get out our own self-hatred. That's my theory. You know what I mean? Because on a spiritual level, the people that I admire and learn from, and from my own experience, dislike is never about the thing that you are disliking. It's always about you. And anytime I've caught myself not liking something, not just being indifferent, but not liking something, it's because it triggered something in me that I was uncomfortable with. It either reminded me that I wasn't shining my light bright enough, or it reminded me that I'm uncomfortable with some aspect of my own self that I don't like, right? And so it's really not about the other thing that you're projecting onto. It's about you. It's never about the other thing. But that said, human beings just like, you need the positive things and you need the negative things. Like in every science fiction book, like, you know, the good ones, like 1984 and all that stuff, there's these things that the governments will work into this social fabric to give people an opportunity to like in 1984, George Orwell's 1984, there's the hate hour, right? The hate hour, where people get around and just hate this guy who comes on the screen, who's the enemy of the state, and everybody just screams at him, because you just need something to dislike so that you can feel better about your own self. And who's another one who has a good theory on that? Seeing his face, James Baldwin. James Baldwin has plenty theories on that when it comes to like race relations, and about how we need to how whites in his example, whites need to hold on to the negative characterizations of blacks so that they can defend and feel okay with the position that they have, and with the exploitation that has happened, with all of the oppression and all of the atrocities. You have to have a narrative in place to defend your abuses, or your community's abuses. You have to, otherwise it's like, I'm a terrible person, and you're not that. So you have something to hold on to defend your superiority, because you need to feel superior to feel good about yourself. So I mean, hate is sometimes about that too, about your own inability to find value in and of yourself without being able to position yourself as superior to something else. As in, the only way you can give yourself meaning and the only way you can give yourself validation is to say, I am better than. So I will critique and hate or whatever because this is terrible, and now I feel okay because at least I'm not that. And so, art and artists lend themselves to being a vehicle for that type of expression as well. That type of, you know what I mean? I need to feel better about myself, so let me just find something that's terrible, about this person who puts themselves out there.
I hear you. And that's kind of why, like, I don't want to participate in public critiquing of anything. Because even when I was thinking about, like, Julie Mango TV as, like, a place to talk about, like, cultural, like, themes in Caribbean films, I was like, I don't want it to be critique, though. I started off saying critique because I realized that there was, like, a gap missing for critiques or critics for Caribbean or even just Black Caribbean and critics
Yeah.
film, and like our films don't necessarily get critiqued. Because I was even looking on, I don't know if I want to say it. I was looking at Rotten Tomatoes, whatever. I'll apologize later.
What's wrong with that?
No, because about what I'm about to say.
Okay.
Yeah, Rotten Tomatoes, right? And just to see like if there are any Caribbean films that were kind of like critiqued on there, like what they said about them, and then some of the things, I think it was like on Shatas or something like that, so like an older film. But some of the things that were said about it was just like, oh, this proves that like not everyone can make movies. Some kind of sentiment that was and it's just like, oh, no matter like where you are, bad movies are bad movies. And I was just like, this is not kind of what I want to participate in when I'm talking about like how our films affect culture. I just want to focus on the culture part and say, okay, this is a theme that happened in this film. Let us talk about that, how it affects us as a community, affects us as a region, or even our diaspora, and then leave it at that. Because I don't want to get into the whole like the cinematography was this, the writing was that.
Yeah.
I understand that there's a place for that, but I just realized that like as somebody who is again also empathetic to the creation, especially in an industry that is barely an industry, it's really, really young, we're still growing. I don't want to focus on people's technical things because I don't know like what resources they had to make their production, right? So I think like I would rather look at what we do have in our catalogs from the region and what's to come from a perspective of like, how does this affect our culture? How does it show up in our culture? Is this representative of our culture? And if it is, how? Like, what does this say about us and about the themes? So just like how when you were talking about Big Man Dan and how like you were looking at the representation from a female perspective, that's something that I would say, okay, let's pull that out and have a conversation about that versus saying, oh, the animation was this, or the song was that, or the scoring, you know what I mean? Like the voice was this, right? Because I don't think that's kind of productive for such a small market that we're in. I think what's more productive is to talk about like how what we're doing lends to our culture or reflects our culture even, you know?
Yeah, I love that approach. I mean, because both things go into making a good movie, both the technical and the story elements and the cultural elements. But you're right, we're working in a region where resources are sparse. And most things are working with budgets where it's like, you can't even believe that they got that done for that budget, right? And so forgiving some technical things is necessary, even though we always want to try to improve our technical craft as well, because ideally what we want is for our stories to speak for themselves without audiences getting distracted by any of the technical things. And so that's definitely part of it. And I wouldn't want to say that we don't need to work on it as an industry to get better, and that if something has critique, that it's not valid to critique those things, and so that, the filmmakers can get better. That's important. But it's even more important to figure out, if you do connect with this, why do you connect with it? What about this is presenting something that people are responding to, the audience members who love and embrace it? What did they love and embrace about it? What what does it say about our culture, about the artist's perspective? Do we spot any talent in there that is promising, and that with the right package can definitely be huge? That kind of stuff, like you're saying, I think is even more valuable than was it technically perfect?
Right, because like I would want to shine a light on the positive things. Like obviously negative things would be there, and like if they are, that's something that you want to address. To me anyway, like I might be wrong, but I would prefer to address that in a different kind of atmosphere, not necessarily like in a blog or a video. For all the world to see us bashing each other. Like we have
no.
So, I think it would be best if that was in a different forum. There are a lot of like programs coming up now to help our people get more technically sound, and like our actors get more technically sound. So I would leave that to that forum and say, okay, for us, like what I would want to do is just shine a positive light on the production, the story, all of that stuff, because I think it will be better for the overall growth
of the industry.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Like I have a filmmaker friend who I was a consultant on his first feature, and we were talking about critique in just a conversation we were having, and I told him, yeah, I don't really feel like I would critique stuff in public. Like in private, I'll tell you that, okay, this needs to improve, this was kind of crappy, thing. But out there, I don't think I need to put that out there. Whether it's work like art we're talking about, or just in general, I think to make it even more macro, right? Just in general about our community and our people, I don't think it helps to tear people apart and down for public entertainment or public enjoyment or public whatever, right? If we it's like airing your dirty laundry in a family or whatever. If there are things that we need to get better about, we can help each other get better without blasting it in a way that is like demonstrative, like, look at this terrible thing. You know what I mean? Like, okay, cool.
It would be more.
But how is that helping it get better?
Yeah, exactly. Because you want to take it from more of like an educational standpoint.
I think so.
This is how, like, these are some things you don't have to call the work out to use the work as an example.
Yeah.
To, you know, you don't have to say the work.
Or you can.
Yeah.
You can if you want to, but like, and there's nothing wrong with using, because I mean, again, you can't control how people critique. So there's nothing wrong with using the work and saying that this is how it can get better.
Yeah.
But I don't know if just tearing it down for the sake of tearing it down without like, you know, making suggestions, and also without like communicating, if you can, to a relevant audience that can do something about the suggestions, you know?
Yeah, because if you're doing it just to like people who aren't even in the industry, then what's the point? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, it's just I think it's, again, personal preference.
Yeah.
That's just how I feel about critique in general. So I'm not saying that if somebody does that, like, they're wrong, because critique is important. We just
of course, exactly. Just talk about it. Everybody has their place.
Yeah.
And like comedians, critique, all that is important for the, you know, it's just, you have to let people do what they do, right? But it's just, like you said, our approach. I think I'm on the same page with you. Our approach, we can say our, because I agree with you completely. Our approach is more about, you know, celebrating the good, reflecting on our culture, and pointing out opportunities for improvement.
Yes, I like it. I like the way that you framed that, because that's exactly what it is. Oh man! All right, so it's just to end up like we didn't really finish the Issa Rae masterclass.
Should we? Let's watch the last clip because it's Issa. Let's just do it.
Okay, and then we can wrap up.
Issa.
Hold on, let me see. You know, I'm not good at this sharing screen thing. 1 second.
Issa.
Share, and then make it big. And then
And your friends have to recognize themselves, right?
Oh, my friends totally do. Yeah.
Dude, your character's name is Issa, and you're Issa. Does that ever get confusing? Because I've played someone named Steven for a long time.
Yes.
Does it ever confuse your fans in any way?
It absolutely does. Yep.
yeah, so that it was the right clip that we could have shown earlier, where she was like, "Yeah, they attack me."
Oh well, at least she's making bank, so she can be like, she's literally making $1 for every single attack. So you know what I mean? It's like you go ahead and throw those attacks at me, like ching 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 ching. Every time you like promote me, it's just another. You know what I mean? So she seems comfortable with it.
Yeah, and she's gonna keep writing about her friends.
Of course.
Forever. So like, if you attack her, she's probably gonna write about you.
Of course. And she seems really comfortable with it. And I think it's helpful. Because I'm nowhere close to where Issa is in my career journey. But even at the start of my journey, I think it's helpful to have all sorts of people around you, including people who just rip you apart. Because it really is a strengthening thing. You know what I mean? It helps you be okay with yourself. You're like, okay, that's how you feel? Cool. On to the next project.
It's just about the work. All right.
Yeah, otherwise you would be like a slave to people's opinions, right? And like cowering every time somebody has, and that's not a cool place to be. If you like every time somebody has something bad to say about you, you actually like, die inside. That's not. So it's a fortifying thing to, I think, have those kind of experiences too. It's all part of the thing. It makes you stronger. It makes you better. It makes you, and you know that it's still attention. So people are engaged enough to care and to sling mud at her. Like, how could you be so disgusting? Like, what's wrong with you? It's just my art. It's just my art. I swear.
Because even Drake, like, if he ever watches this, hey Drake, he'll be like, whatever. So they misunderstood.
Yeah, he has his millions. Exactly. He has his millions. He's sitting comfortably. His song is a hit. Like, why does he care that we are like, who's going to teach him how our writers work?
Oh man. All right, cool. So this was fun as per usual.
Yes,
So
my dear.
if you have anything to say about writing or writing from experience, or if you want to tell us how you wrote about someone, did they know? Did they not? Drop it in the comment. We would love to know. And remember, if you're going to write about their full story, get the life rights so you don't get sued. Thank you again for joining me and Kafi, and I, on another Script Concierge video. We will see you on the next one.
All right.